Edwin, also known as Eadwine or Æduinus, was the king of Deira and Bernicia, which later became known as Northumbria, from about 616 until his death. He converted to Christianity and was baptized in 627. After he fell at the Battle of Hatfield Chase, he was venerated as a saint. Edwin was the son of Ælle, king of Deira, and seems to have had two siblings. His sister Acha was married to Æthelfrith, king of neighbouring Bernicia, an otherwise unknown sibling fathered Hierarch, who in turn fathered Abbess Hilda of Whitby and Hereford's wife to Æthelfrith, the brother of King Anna of East Anglia. Early life in exile. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle reported that on Ælle's death a certain Æthelfrith assumed power. The exact identity of Æthelfrith is uncertain. He may have been a brother of Ælle, an elder brother of Edwin, an otherwise unknown Deiran noble, or the father of Æthelfrith. Æthelfrith himself appears to have been king of Northumbria, both Deira and Bernicia, by no later than 604. During the reign of Æthelfrith, Edwin was in exile. The location of his early exile as a child is not known, but late traditions, reported by Reginald of Durham and Geoffrey of Monmouth, place Edwin in the kingdom of Gwynedd, fostered by King Cadfan ap Iago, so allowing biblical parallels to be drawn from the struggle between Edwin and his supposed foster brother Cadwallin. By the 610s he was certainly in Mercia under the protection of King Searle, whose daughter Quinburg he married. By around 616, Edwin was in East Anglia under the protection of King Radwald. Bede reports that Æthelfrith tried to have Radwald murder his unwanted rival, and that Radwald intended to do so until his wife persuaded him otherwise with divine prompting. Æthelfrith faced Radwald in battle by the river Idle in 616, and Æthelfrith was defeated. Radwald installed Edwin as king of Northumbria. Raedwald's son Raeganhere may have been killed at this battle, but the exact date and manner of Raedwald's death are not known. He likely died between the years 616 to 627, and the efficacy of Edwin's kingship ostensibly depended greatly on his fealty to Radwald. Edwin was installed as king of Northumbria, effectively confirming Radwald as Bretwalda. Æthelfrith's sons went into exile in Irish Dalriata and Pictland. That Edwin was able to take power not only in his native Deira, but also in Bernicia may have been due to his support from Radwald, to whom he may have remained subject during the early part of his reign. Edwin's reign marks an interruption of the otherwise consistent domination of Northumbria by the Bernicians and has been seen as contrary to the prevailing tendency. Edwin as king, with the death of Æthelfrith, and of the powerful Ethelbert of Kent the same year, Radwald and his client Edwin were well placed to dominate England, and indeed Radwald did so until his death a decade later. Edwin expelled Ceredic from the minor British kingdom of Elmed in either 616 or 626. Elmet had probably been subject to Mercia and then to Edwin. The larger kingdom of Lindsey appears to have been taken over c. 625. After the death of King Radwald, Edwin and Eadbald of Kent were allies at this time, and Edwin arranged to marry Eadbald's sister Ethelberg. Bede notes that Eadbald would agree to marry his sister to Edwin only if he converted to Christianity. The marriage of Eadbald's Merovingian mother Bertha had resulted in the conversion of Kent, and Ethelberg's would do the same in Northumbria. Edwin's expansion to the west may have begun early in his reign. There is firm evidence of a war waged in the early 620s between Edwin and Fiachne mac Baetin of the Dalnarada, king of the Ullaid in Ireland. A lost poem is known to have existed recounting Fiachne's campaigns against the Saxons, and the Irish annals report the siege, or the storming, of Bamborough in Bernicia in 623 to 624. This should presumably be placed in the context of Edwin's designs on the Isle of Man, a target of allied ambitions. Fiachni's death in 626, at the hands of his namesake Fiachni Macdemain of the Dalfiartich, and the second Fiachni's death a year later in battle against the Dalriata probably eased the way for Edwin's conquests in the Irish Sea province. The routine of kingship in Edwin's time involved regular, probably annual, wars with neighbours to obtain tribute, submission, and slaves. By Edwin's death, it is likely that these annual wars, unreported in the main, had extended the Northumbrian kingdoms from the Humber and the Mersey north to the southern uplands and the Cheviots. The royal household moved regularly from one royal ville to the next, consuming the food renders given in tribute and the produce of the royal estates, dispensing justice, and ensuring that royal authority remained visible throughout the land. The royal sites in Edwin's time included Yeavering in Bernicia, where traces of a timber amphitheatre have been found. This Roman feature makes Bede's claim that Edwin was preceded by a standard bearer carrying a tufa appear to be more than antiquarian curiosity, although whether the model for this practice was Roman or Frankish is unknown. Other royal sites included Campodunem in Elmet, Sancton in Deira, and Goodmanim, the site where the pagan high priest Squafi destroyed the idols according to Bede. Edwin's realm included the former Roman cities of York and Carlisle, and both appear to have been of some importance in the 7th century, although it is not clear whether urban life continued in this period. Edwin's conversion to Christianity. The account of Edwin's conversion offered by Bede turns on two events. The first, during Edwin's exile, tells how Edwin's life was saved by Paulinus of York. The second, following his marriage to Æthelfrith, was the attempted assassination at York, at Easter 626, by an agent of Cachelm of Wessex. Edwin's decision to allow the baptism of his daughter Eanfled and his subsequent promise to adopt Christianity if his campaign against Cachelm proved successful. Apart from these events, the general character of Bede's account is one of an indecisive king, unwilling to take risks, unable to decide whether to convert or not. Along with these events, the influence of Edwin's half-Merovingian queen cannot be ignored, and the letters which Bede reproduces, sent by Pope Boniface V to Edwin and Æthelfrith, are unlikely to have been unique, given that Kent was under Frankish influence while Bede sees the mission as being Roman in origin. The Franks were equally interested in converting the fellow Germans and in extending the power and influence. Bede recounts Edwin's baptism, and that of his chief men, on the 12th of April 627. Edwin's zeal, so Bede says, led to Raedwald's son Eopvald also converting. Bede's account of the conversion is oft cited. After Paulinus explains the tenets of Christianity, the king asks his counselors what they think of the new doctrine. Edwin's priest Squafi responds that they may be worthwhile. After all, he says, no one has been more respectful of and devoted to the gods than he, and he has seen no benefits from his dedication to them. Then, an unnamed counsellor stands up and addresses the king, also seeing the benefit of the new faith. Squafi speaks again and announces that they should destroy the idols and temples they had hitherto worshipped. King Edwin agrees and embraces Christianity. Squafi himself will set fire to the idols, declaring, I will do this myself, for now that the true God has granted me knowledge, who more suitably than I can set a public example, and destroy the idols that I worshipped in ignorance. Quote, Bede goes on to describe the scene as Squafi formally renounces his superstitions, and asked the king to give him arms and a stallion, armed with both a sword and spear. Squafi rides Edwin's horse towards the idols, all within view of the crowd gathered to witness Edwin's conversion. Upon reaching the temple, Kofi cast a spear into it and profaned it. In an article titled "How Kofi Pierced Christ's Side," Julia Barrow examines Bede's Latin text and pays particular attention to the passage concerning Kofi's attack upon the temple. Barrow notes that Bede's use of lancer was not the word medieval writers normally used for spear, while asta was the usual choice. Barrow goes on to claim that lancer was likely used by Bede as a reference to the details of the crucifixion of Christ provided in the Vulgate Book of John. Thus Kofi's desecration of the shrine is to be understood as an inversion of the piercing of the temple of Christ's body. All of these details support an understanding that Bede had great warmth and admiration for Edwin. The brief speech by the unnamed councillor, a nobleman, has attracted much attention, suggesting the wisdom and hopefulness of the Christian message. It has inspired poets such as William Wordsworth and was called the most poetic simile in Bede. The present life man, O king, seems to me, in comparison with that time which is unknown to us, like to the swift flight of a sparrow through the room wherein you sit at supper in winter amid your offices and ministers, with a good fire in the midst whilst the storms of rain and snow prevail abroad. The sparrow, I say, flying in at one door and immediately out at another, whilst he is within, is safe from the wintry, but after a short space of fair weather he immediately vanishes out of your sight into the dark winter, from which he has emerged. So this life of man appears for a short space, but of what went before or what is to follow we are ignorant. If, therefore, this new doctrine contains something more certain, it seems justly to deserve to be followed. Noteworthy is Bede's summation of the nature of Edwin's reign as King of Northumbria. It is told that at the time there was so much peace in Britannia that whenever King Edwin's power extended, as is said proverbially, right up to today, even if a woman with a recently born child wanted to walk across the whole island, from sea to sea, she could do so without anyone harming her. Quote, Kershaw indicates that Bede's decision to couch Edwin's peace in proverbial terms offers a chilling insight into the levels of lawlessness accepted in 8th century England. Furthermore, a definition of peace is to be understood as freedom from robbery, rape, or violence, security to travel at will and to literally go in peace. Edwin's conversion and Eadwine were reversed by the successors, and in the case of Northumbria the Roman Paulinus appears to have had very little impact. Indeed, by expelling British clergy from Elmet and elsewhere in Edwin's realm, Paulinus may have weakened the Church rather than strengthening it. Very few Roman clergy were present in Paulinus's time, only James the Deacon being known, so that the conversion can have been only superficial, extending little beyond the royal court. Paulinus's decision to flee Northumbria at Edwin's death, unlike his acolyte James, who remained in Northumbria for many years afterwards until his death, suggests that the conversion was not popular, and the senior Italian cleric unloved. Edwin as overlord. The first challenge to Edwin came soon after his marriage alliance with Kent, concluded at Canterbury in the summer of 625. By offering his protection to lesser kings, such as the King of White, Edwin thwarted the ambitions of Cuchelm of Wessex. Cuchelm's response was to send an assassin. As noted already, Edwin did not immediately respond to this insult, suggesting either that he felt unable to do so, or that Bede's portrayal of him as a rather indecisive ruler is accurate. Following the failed assassination, as noted, Edwin committed himself to Christianity provided only that he was victorious against Cuchelm. From about 627 onwards, Edwin was the most powerful king among the Anglo-Saxons, ruling Bernicia, Deira and much of eastern Mercia, the Isle of Man, and Anglesey. His alliance with Kent, the subjection of Wessex, and his recent successes added to his power and authority. The imperium, as Bede calls it, that Edwin possessed was later equated with the idea of a Bretwalda, a later concept invented by West Saxon kings in the 9th century. Put simply, success confirmed Edwin's overlordship, and failure would diminish it. Edwin's supposed foster brother Cadwallon ap Cadwin enters the record circa 629, but Cadwallon was defeated and either submitted to Edwin's authority or went into exile. With the defeat of Cadwallon, Edwin's authority appears to have been unchallenged for a number of years, until Penda of Mercia and Cadwallon rose against him in 632 to 633. Edwin faced Penda and Cadwallon at the Battle of Hatfield in the autumn of 632–633 and was defeated and killed. For a time his body was hidden in Sherwood Forest at a location that became the village of Edwinstowe, his head being eventually buried at York and the rest of his body at Whitby. Of his two grown sons by Clonbur of Mercia, Osfrith died at Hatfield, and Ædfrith was captured by Penda and killed some time afterwards. After his death, Edwin's queen Ethelberg, along with Paulinus, returned to Kent, taking her son Æthelfrith, daughter Eanfled, and Osfrith's son Yffi into exile with her. Æthelfrith and Yffi were sent to the court of Ethelberg's kinsman Dagobert I, king of the Franks, but died soon afterwards. Eanfled, however, lived to marry her first cousin King Oswiu, son of Acha and Æthelfrith. Death and legacy. Edwin's realm was divided at his death. He was succeeded by Osric, son of Edwin's paternal uncle Ælfric in Deira, and by Eanfrith, son of Æthelfrith and Edwin's sister Acha in Bernicia. Both reverted to paganism, and both were killed by Cadwallon. Eventually Eanfrith's brother Oswald defeated and killed Cadwallon and united Northumbria once more. Thereafter, with the exception of Oswine, son of Osric, power in Northumbria was in the hands of the Eadings, the descendants of Ida of Bernicia, until the middle of the 8th century. After his death, Edwin came to be venerated as a saint by some, although his cult was eventually overshadowed by the ultimately more successful cult of Oswald, who was killed in 642. They met their deaths in battle against similar foes, the pagan Mercians and the British, thus allowing both of them to be perceived as martyrs. However, Bede's treatment of Oswald clearly demonstrates that he regarded him as an unambiguously saintly figure, a status that he did not accord to Edwin. Edwin's renown comes largely from his treatment at some length by Bede, writing from an uncompromisingly English and Christian perspective, and rests on his belated conversion to Christianity. His united kingdom in the north did not outlast him, and his conversion to Christianity was renounced by his successors. When his kingship is compared with his pagan brother-in-law Æthelfrith, or to Æthelfrith's sons Oswald and Oswiu, or to the resolutely pagan Penda of Mercia, Edwin appears to be something less than a key figure in Britain during the first half of the 7th century. Perhaps the most significant legacies of Edwin's reign lay in his failures, the rise of Penda and of Mercia, and the return from Irish exile of the sons of Æthelfrith, which tied the kingdom of Northumbria into the Irish Sea world for generations.